So Courtney and I built this amazing connection and fell in love while I was still in prison and we had never met in person.
Yeah, so we knew we connected emotionally and intellectually. We had shared interests. We were, talking about all these things we would do. But as we all know, those kinds of connections don't always translate into physical attraction. And there was really no way we couldn't meet because of COVID. There was no visitation. So we were trying to figure out any way we could to bridge that gap.
So people have talked about pheromones and how important it is, and like, what if somebody doesn't just smell right and you're just not attracted to them? So Courtney couldn't send anything to me because I was in prison and you had security concerns. We figured out a way for me to send a piece of me to her.
Was it wrapped in a Doritos bag?
Maybe.
I was like, he smelled so good, like Doritos.
So I took a t-shirt and I wore it to bed every night for about 30 days. So I would wear it to bed, but I wouldn't sweat a lot. I wouldn't do anything, but I wanted to kind of have that like scent of me, like what I smell like at the end of the day. And then I took it and I sealed it, and it may have been a Doritos bag.
I think he washed it out though, so it wasn't like covered with Dorito crumbs.
But yeah, so I took the t-shirt and I folded it up. I put it in the bag and then sealed the bag and took it onto property and mailed it out to her. So she got a piece of me. She got what I smelled like, which sounds really bizarre in retrospect, but at the time it seemed like a really vital like experiment.
Yeah, and needless to say, I liked the way it smelled. I think it did. I think it actually did smell like you.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd been wearing it. It was wrapped up. It was just a white t-shirt. And I think I had read some experiment somewhere where people did that. And like people could identify their loved one by the scent of a t-shirt that somebody had slept in. So that's where that idea came from. But he was still in the dark because I couldn't send him something I'd been sleeping in.
And I was really worried that it was going to be like because our whole relationship is so bizarre that it would be something like some weird genetic mix where like I thought she smelled like fish and she actually smelled fine, or like that just there was going to be something, because everything seems so perfect and so just out of the blue that the idea that we could actually be physically compatible was amazing. But again, so we had kind of reverse catfished each other. So we had told each other like the worst parts of ourselves. Like you were like, yeah, COVID hadn't been kind to me, honey. Like I'm getting older and things are not looking good. And I was like, oh my God, like she's really painting a bad picture. And I did the same thing. I was like, I like to eat brownies and cheesecake. Like guys make amazing prison recipes. And so she thought like I was just kind of overweight and like I wasn't taking care of myself and like I had a bad tooth and just.
I mean, to be fair though, we were working. We both knew we were working out every day.
True, that's true.
I mean, so there was a lot of self-deprecating sort of making ourselves sound. I don't know. I was pretty bad. I did put on some weight during the pandemic.
Well, I just want to say this. Like, after all the way we sold ourselves, when I actually met her that first day, when they let me out, I'm sitting in the driveway next to the cornfield next to the prison, and she pulls up and gets out of the car, I was like, oh my God. Like, and the thing is, I'd seen her on TV, but in TV you have no idea of context. Like, I didn't know how tall she was. I didn't know anything other than that she was a pretty face. But so then a friend of mine, I wanted to do something special for her birthday. So a friend of mine's a masseuse, so I paid for a series of massages so she could get a series of massages. And the first thing that my friend said when I talked to her was like, damn, Courtney's hot. Like, you did really well for yourself. And I was like, okay, good. Like, it's not an illusion. Like, I'm not tricking myself. So I went in with that kind of assurance from a friend who found her very attractive. But yeah, it was still nice to meet in person. And it was still nice to know that there was a translation for all that. And it was almost seamless. Like, I think I expected more complication and more issues. And we definitely have had, like, issues or fights or things we've had to talk through. But the transition from, like, two-dimensional voice over a phone to three-dimensional, like, in person was really seamless.
Yeah. I mean, strangely so. And I think that the deep emotional connection that we had, we decided, even if there weren't physical sparks immediately, that we were going to try to make it work or try to build that side. And we because we'd had that horrible video visit the first time we saw each other on video and had this kind of like, both of us were not
terrible visceral reaction.
It was not a good reaction. It was so awkward. So we were like, well, it could be that bad. It could be really awkward. But the fact that we could talk about that and laugh about it, and then we would make these like increasingly horrific scenarios of like what would happen when we first met, which really did become truly absurd. I mean, the cornfield was one part of it. And then I was like, well, if nutria, the invasive rodents, like happened to be in that cornfield, that would make it even worse. And you added a few horrible details. So we had pretty much created the most nightmarish scenario you could ever imagine. So like the bar was low.
Yeah, anything was going to be better than that. But then it was the amazing comfort with which we shared each other's space, because for both of us, like, you hadn't been in a serious relationship in all those years, and I hadn't been in a relationship like in person at all. So the idea of actually sharing space, like in prison, if somebody touches you while you're sleeping, like, your response is going to be a lot different than if she rolls over and puts her arm over me. So I worried, like, am I even going to be able to sleep next to her without like freaking out or without like. And it was seamless. It was like the first I didn't sleep for 3 days, and she immediately went to sleep and just started snoring. Like, I was like, really? You're not even gonna like stay up with me? Like, this is the biggest night of my life, and you're just out. But it was seamless, and it was, instead of being like scared or uncomfortable or recoiling when she touched me, it was just like soothing. It was like everything went away. I remember reading this myth. I think it was like the Aztecs had this idea that when warriors came back, they had to do two things. They had to like dive into this pool of water and then boil the water off with the heat from battle, and then they had to suckle at the breast of a woman. And I think the point is, though, there's a calming influence there. Like, her putting her arm around me wasn't a sense of safety, like a big protective safety, but it was a sense of like knowing that I was safe and knowing that I was loved and knowing I was in a safe place. And I cannot tell you how much that changed the way that I experienced things getting out.